Good morning. Today we are going to look at how to integrate with DocuSign using Informatica's application integration platform. We're going to use the REST API of DocuSign to interact with it. Before we actually go to the integration, I'd like to present to you a very high-level overview of our application integration platform. Informatica's application integration platform, also called as Real-Time, allows us to create and consume web service APIs, do orchestration of cloud and on-prem services, including the support for calling other ICS tasks, for example, like your DSS task or your mapping configuration task, automation of business processes, including the support for long-running business processes, supporting message-based integrations like your pub/sub patterns and event-based integrations, and finally, the ability to provide interactive access to data for Salesforce users using our ScreenFlow Guide technology. This is how typically a business process looks like. You orchestrate with services, systems that are either on the cloud or within your network. This is an example of a hybrid business process. In this, for example, you have call to an Amazon Web Service, which is on the cloud, and you also have a call to an agent process that does the database lookup. The call to the agent process is sent through the secure channel that is initiated between Informatica's secure agent and the cloud. Once the agent process receives the request here, it does its own orchestration, and then it responds back to the cloud process, and the business process moves on. In terms of the current capabilities of the platform, when it comes to exposing APIs, we have the ability to expose SOAP and REST API out of the box. You don't actually have to do anything special to do either of them. You'll just design the process, publish the process, and you will have a SOAP endpoint with WSDL auto-generated and a REST endpoint with Swagger definition. This makes it easier for clients who are calling the services to generate the code. For data within a database and SAP Table Reader, we also give them an OData endpoint, and we also have the ability to trigger these processes directly from Salesforce outbound message. In terms of consuming APIs, we can pretty much integrate with any SOAP or REST-based system using our service connector approach. This is a form-based approach, something that you'll see as part of integration with DocuSign, but this basically enables us to create a virtual connector for any API that is SOAP or REST-based. We can also do advanced stuff like calling Java functions. We can do advanced SQL stuff like complex joins and stored procedures using our data access service. In terms of the listeners that we expose out of the box, we have the file listener, Amazon S3, FTP, SFTP. The important thing to note about this listener is it's event-based. In other words, if you have a requirement wherein you're watching for a specific file in a directory, and as soon as the file comes into the directory, you want a business process to be kicked off, our platform makes it easier for you to do it in an event-driven way rather than poll for files. In terms of the messaging standards that we support, we are fully compliant with JMS. We also support newer protocols like AMQP. We do have connectors for Amazon SNS and SQS systems. In terms of the data service connector that we offer out of the box, we have the JDBC connector, the OData connector, the SAP Table Reader, BAPI, Workday, and NetSuite. And for any systems that we don't have a connector out of the box, we can pretty much create a service connector and connect to the systems using their APIs. So when do you actually need the real-time platform? When there is a need to maintain long-running transactions that maintain state, or synchronous web service calls that integrate with multiple systems and there's a need for orchestration. You have the ability to execute activities in parallel. You have the ability to have timers in a business process. You have the ability to receive events during the business process, something that we'll see as part of the DocuSign integration. You have the ability to do complex fault handling, and you actually have visibility into the process execution at runtime. You can see the data that's flowing through each step. that it makes it very easy to troubleshoot if something were to go wrong. And finally, the ability to suspend, rewind, and restart a business process. For example, if it's a mission-critical process and if it's long-running and you don't want it to fault, then you can absolutely suspend a process, rewind a process to a previous state, or restart a business process. So coming to the actual DocuSign use case, we are going to send a document to DocuSign and have it delivered to a recipient so that he can sign the document. This is at a high level the business use case. We are exposing a web service on Informatica side. The web service accepts an attachment as input. It needs recipient information so that it can deliver that document. And then we're going to use DocuSign's REST API to upload this document. Once the document has been signed by the recipient, we are going to use the webhooks feature of DocuSign to send a callback request to Informatica saying that the document has been signed and the business process can move on. So this is an example of a long-running business process wherein once you publish the document to DocuSign, the user can either immediately sign the document and then a callback request will be sent to Informatica, or he can, for example, take his time and let's say sign after 2 days, in which case the business process will be running and it will wait for the event or a callback from DocuSign. That is the advantage of the application integration platform. We have the ability to do long-running processes. We will also, as part of this use case, log the status to the database. So for example, we will log the status like we've sent the document to DocuSign, we're waiting for signature. Once we receive the callback request from DocuSign, we'll update the record saying that the business process has completed. So this is at a high level, the DocuSign use case. Let's actually look at the business process design. For this, I'm going to log into Informatica Cloud. This is my Informatica Cloud org. I'm going to log into the real-time platform. I have these 4 artifacts that I have developed for this particular use case. This is the actual business process, send document for e-signature. And then, as I said, anytime you want to integrate with a REST API or a SOAP API, we use the concept of service connectors. Now, these service connectors are something that can be auto-generated. For example, if you have a WSDL or a Swagger definition associated with an API, you can put these WSDL definitions and Swagger definitions into this particular tab, and it will automatically generate the service connector for you. In this case, we'll be first looking at the service connector. The service connector is actually a form-based interface wherein you define the actions that you want to perform against a particular API. In this case, I have 2 basic operations. I first need to log into DocuSign. DocuSign will give me back an account ID and a base URL that I will have to use for all subsequent operations. So I have 2 basic operations, login and send document for e-signature. I am utilizing the best principles of object-oriented programming, whereby I have 2 abstract actions wherein I have defined all the common set of parameters that all my other actions will use. So in this case, for example, you can see here that the all operations against DocuSign API would need this authentication header to be sent. So I am defining this as an abstract action. That way, any action that inherits this will automatically inherit the HTTP header. This way, I don't have to duplicate this code for every action. And even if I were to change something, I'll change it in the abstract action, and all my actions that are inheriting this abstract action will be updated automatically. I am also defining connection-specific information here. This is a good way of designing your service connector. That way, all the connection level properties are separated from the actual code. When you migrate your service connector from one org to the other, it makes it very easy for you to maintain these. So you don't actually have to go into the actions and change anything. You will just update these global variables here, and the actions will, at runtime, pick up the latest value. In this case, account ID is something that is specific to my DocuSign account, username and password, API key, as well as base URL. The account ID and the base URL are retrieved as a response of the login operation. I'm using the Sandbox account for performing these operations. I have also encrypted the password and API key so that it's not visible. So this is at a high level the design of the service connector. The first operation is the login operation. As you can see here, it inherits the base action. This is a HTTP GET operation. It has no input. It primarily needs the HTTP header sent, and then it returns back the account ID and the base URL. The advantage of Service Connector is that you can actually test your API calls from here. So you don't actually have to run a business process in order to do this. I have already put in the sample data for all of these global variables, so I'm going to do a test. And there you go. I have the account ID as well as the base URL that were returned as part of this operation. Now, it actually returns many more fields in addition to the account ID as well as the base URL, but I just need these two, so I'm just capturing these two. The other flexibility that you have here is that you have the ability to run this on cloud server, or you have the ability to run this within your secure agent. So based on your business use case, you will decide where to run this particular service connector. The second operation is send document for e-signature. Again, just like with login, you have the ability to send input to this particular call, and you can put in the sample data here, and you can actually test it, and it makes a call to the DocuSign API. In this action, I have an object as an input, and I'm going to test this. I have already provided some sample data here. When I test this, I'm capturing the envelope ID and the actual status. So for each request, there's a unique envelope ID that gets generated. And you can see here what was the endpoint that the request was sent to, what was the actual request that was sent. So this is the JSON document that was sent at runtime, and the actual response that we got back. So you can look at here the envelope ID. We will need the envelope ID because in order to check the status of a particular document that has been uploaded, you will need the envelope ID. So these are the different actions that we have configured. So once you have created the service connector, you will go ahead and publish it. And then you will create a corresponding connector for that particular service connector. This is where you mention all the connection properties. So my account ID, my base URL, my username, my password, and my API key. Once you have created the connector, it's time to actually build your business process that integrates with the DocuSign API. My business process is called send document for e-signature. At a high level, it has these different input parameters, the actual file, which comes as an attachment, recipient email, recipient name, and then there's no output field here because this is an asynchronous process. As soon as user submits the request, we are going to acknowledge his request, and then we are going to interact with the DocuSign API. Once the recipient has signed the PDF document, DocuSign is going to send a callback request to Informatica, and then the business process basically finishes. You can see here the first step is acknowledging the request, and then we're logging into the DocuSign API. It will give us the account ID and the base URL. And then the next step would be uploading this document to DocuSign. As soon as this is done, we are logging an entry into the database saying that we have sent the document for signature. One important thing to note here is that the DocuSign actually needs your PDF document in a binary format, while we are actually accepting an attachment. So internally, we will translate the attachment into binary format using the functions that we provide out of the box. So we have a function here called getBase64 from attachment that we'll be utilizing to achieve this. This way, the clients don't have to write custom code to translate the attachment into binary format. After the database record has been inserted, we are now waiting for a callback request. This is where the persistence feature of the platform offers you this flexibility. You have the ability to receive events. So your business process basically stops here and then waits for an event to be sent. The way I have designed this is there's a generic callback process called DocuSign callback. So anytime DocuSign wants to send a callback request, it sends to this particular business process. And there's a specific format in which it sends the callback request. The key for us is the envelope ID. That's how we are going to correlate a callback request to a specific instance. You will have hundreds of these running in your production. When the user finishes signing the document and DocuSign sends you a callback request, you would need to associate that callback request to the right process that's waiting for it. And the way we are going to do that is using correlation. So this is a generic process that receives the callback request, and then it calls this particular event that we have configured. The events are configured again here in the Messages tab. I have configured an event called callback from DocuSign, and I'm saying I need envelope ID as the input, and I'm going to use that for correlation. So this is called callback from DocuSign. Now this generic process, when it receives the request, it extracts the envelope ID. So it extracts the envelope ID, and then it calls this process callback from DocuSign. That's what the event is called, callback from DocuSign. So you can actually go to processes, and then your main process, which is called send document for e-signature, and then you configured an event. So you go to events, and then you can see your event, callback from DocuSign. When you select that, based on the way we have designed the interface, so the interface we have said accepts envelope ID as the input. So it automatically knows that envelope ID as the input. And then you send the envelope ID from the callback request. So this is how the server knows how to correlate a specific callback request to a running instance. In here, we're just saying what is the correlation assignment. I want to correlate it to the existing envelope ID. Now this, I already know the envelope ID from the operation. When I send this particular request, I have envelope ID and status as my output fields. So it's going to match the incoming envelope ID against the envelope ID that was already instantiated. Once we receive the callback request, we're going to update the database saying that the business process has completed. So that's at a high level the design of the process. So let's actually go ahead and demo this. Before that, as I said, we automatically expose SOAP endpoints and REST endpoints for you. So you can see here the REST endpoint with the Swagger definition auto-generated. So clicking on this link will take you to the Swagger definition. We have a SOAP endpoint with a WSDL auto-generated. You can click this link and it will take you to the WSDL definition. I'm going to utilize Postman to demo this particular business process. So this is my process, Informatica's process. If you want, you can enable authentication. So, and that's pretty simple here. You go back to the process. I have said it's allow anonymous access, so it's a public endpoint, but you can just uncheck this and put in the user groups that are allowed to access this particular service. All right, so let's go back to Postman, and this is how the request is sent. The actual file that you want to send, the recipient email, and then the recipient name. As soon as I send a request, I get a 200 back. That's what basically I'm doing. I'm acknowledging the request. One of the advantages of using Informatica's application platform is that you can actually see everything that's happening at runtime. So if I go to monitor active processes, this is where you will monitor all the processes. I have a process called send document for e-signature. Before I go there, I was telling you how the platform supports long-running business processes. You can see, for example, here, I have a business process that started on the 1st of Feb, and it completed on Feb 3rd. I actually finished signing the document just this morning, and this is in GMT time. So the business process was actually running there for 2 days, waiting for the callback event. That's the flexibility you get with this particular platform. I still have quite a few processes that are running in there. But the process that we want to focus on is the send document for e-signature that was triggered just now. It was 1 minute back. So I'm going to open this particular business process. I must have disabled logging. Let me actually enable logging and publish this process again. That way you can see the data at various steps. So this is another advantage. If you don't want any data to be seen at runtime, you actually have the option to disable logging here. So I have just enabled logging, so the latest version is published to the cloud. I'm going to send a request again, and I get an acknowledgement back. If I were to refresh this, I should see a newer instance get created. There you go. So now you can see here the green tick marks indicate that an activity was successfully completed. The first step is the login operation. The output of the login operation is your account ID and base URL. And then the next operation obviously is your uploading the PDF to DocuSign. You can see here the binary version of the PDF and then the actual output fields, envelope ID and status. We will utilize this envelope ID to initialize our correlation set, and that's how the callback request gets routed to the appropriate process. We then use our database connector to log an entry into the database. You can see here the actual envelope ID, status, and file contents. So if I were to update my database table, I'm going to refresh it, you can see here the record with envelope ID 24 has a status as sent. And now when I actually log into DocuSign and complete signing the document, and once we receive the callback request from DocuSign, the status will get changed to completed. You can actually look at the detailed view of the data too. So this is a high-level overview of the data that's flowing in at each step. But if you click on this icon here, And if you go to logs and if you filter by data change, you can look at the sample data for each of the service calls. So the first step was login. Login is actually retrieving the data from the connection properties. But you can look at the response, the account ID, and the base URL. And then the next step, you're actually sending the document here. E-signature request, the actually binary version of the document, and then the recipient email and name that gets asked from the input, and then the actual response, which has the envelope ID and the status. You can also look at the variables. In this case, the input is the actual attachment, recipient email, recipient name, and if you go to the output, all these output variables that were automatically created from the service call. All right. So taking a step back here, now the process is waiting for callback. Now what I do is I go into DocuSign. As you can see here, I have quite a few processes running. So it says that I have 10 documents to sign. But the one that I'm going to focus on is the latest one that was sent 4 minutes back. So I want to sign this. So it says, as you can see here, this was the recipient name. And this DocuSign account is tied to my email address. So I'm going to sign this document. Continue. Next. Sign. As soon as I say finish, the webhooks feature of DocuSign will send a callback request to my Informatica process. And the way you actually configure that is pretty simple. Go to admin, and you go to connect, and there you go. This is my URL to publish. So as I said, I have a generic process, DocuSign callback, and this is its endpoint. And that's what I've basically put in here. And I'm saying enable the log, require acknowledgement, and I'm saying trigger for this particular event. So as soon as the document is signed, completed, that's when you trigger the callback. You can also look at the logs here. At 10:37 Pacific time, that was 1 minute back, that is when I actually signed the document, and it actually sent a callback request. So if I come back here, and if I refresh it, I should see a callback request get instantiated. You can see here callback. The only thing that I'm doing in this process is I'm actually renaming the instance dynamically at runtime. So I am taking the envelope ID from the request and renaming the process title. And that's why you see here the callback for envelope ID 24C417. And that's basically this one, 24C417. So this makes it easier for you to identify a corresponding instance. So you can see here, this process got instantiated. In this process, it extracted the envelope ID and it called the event of this particular process. So if I refresh this, previously it was waiting for the callback request. It now received the callback request, and then it updated the status of the record. So if I refresh my database record, you can see here the one that starts with 24 has a completed status. So that's basically the business process. You've seen how we can receive events from target systems. The advantage of this is you don't have to poll. This is purely real-time. You're utilizing the webhooks feature, and it's a very clean design. The other advantage of having a generic process for requesting all callback requests is that you basically know all the callback requests that were initiated by DocuSign. So if, for example, for whatever reason you miss a callback request, you can come and see here whether this process was first triggered. If this process was triggered, then you can see what was the input to that particular process, what was the envelope ID that DocuSign sent back, and why it did not correlate to an existing instance. So those are some of the advantages for having a separate callback process. Right. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. So this was our use case, and what are some of the takeaways of this particular demo? We have the ability to expose both SOAP and REST APIs with WSDL and Swagger definitions auto-generated. We have the ability to receive events during the business process. We demonstrated the database connectivity using the connector. We were able to monitor the processes at runtime. And the last important step is that I actually published this API on the cloud, but you can, based on your use case, have the API either on the cloud or just within your network. So if you have a secure agent, this is my secure agent, and if I save these changes and publish these changes, then I actually have an API on my local host, on my secure agent. I don't have it on the cloud anymore. So that's the flexibility that you can get with this particular platform. All right, thank you so much.